Chapter 2. The Story of Shantanu and Ganga. King Shantanu was walking by the Ganges river when he saw this incredibly beautiful woman. She was goddess Ganga in human form, but Shantanu did not know that. The king was so enamored by her beauty that he at once asked Ganga to marry him. He put his heart, love, his entire kingdom and wealth at her feet and made this request. Ganga, pleased with the king's love, replied to him, "O king, I shall accept to marry you on one condition. You must never ask me where I am from or the true nature of my origin. You must also never question me on any of my actions, good or bad. You must stand by me on all counts. If you act against any of these conditions, I shall leave you then and there." This was Ganga's condition. The king was so much in love that he accepted Ganga's conditions and they got married. One may ask, why would Ganga make such a condition? Which guy in his senses would agree to something like this? She would do whatever she wants, whether good or bad. The husband should not ask any questions. As the reasons get revealed later in the story, I ask you to remember two things. One, that Ganga did not lie. She was upfront with her expectations. It was up to the king to either accept her as she was or walk away. This is a lesson that each one of us can take in the relationships that we face today. The second thing I ask you to remember is that this story will reveal with clear examples how the law of karma works, and what may seem as a ridiculous act at one time will seem reasonable later on. Shantanu and Ganga lived a life of serene happiness and love. It was a perfect marriage. Ganga was pure in her thoughts, and this attracted Shantanu to her even more. Time passed and they were blessed with a newborn son. When the child was born, Ganga took the child to the Ganges and cast it into the river, immediately killing and drowning the newborn. She then walked back to her kingdom with a smile on her face. Shantanu was aghast with horror. He could not believe what he had just seen. But he stopped himself from asking Ganga any questions, mindful of the promise he made to her. He wanted to ask, mind you. He didn't ask. He restrained himself. As the years passed, Ganga gave birth to 6 more children, and to each one she did the same. As soon as each child was born, she dropped it in the river and drowned and killed it. Shantanu, grieved as he was, asked no questions and bore the pain with restraint. When the 8th child was born and Ganga walked to the river with the same intention, Shantanu could hold himself no longer. He cried out, "Stop, you heartless woman! Why do you do this wretched act? Why do you do what no mother would do? You are as insane as you are beautiful." Saying this, he held Ganga by her hand, pleading not to do this terrible act. I want to pause for a moment here and reflect on how even the best of relationships can have misunderstandings and fights. Irrespective of right or wrong, when one person does something the other does not like, a fight is inevitable. It is how we deal with the fight that is important. Avoiding it is impractical. Back to the story. As Shantanu restrained Ganga from doing this horrible act, Ganga replied, "Dear king, you have broken the promise you made to me, and the time has come for me to leave you. However, before I leave, I shall answer your question and reveal my origin and the reasons for my actions. I am goddess Ganga, and I am in this human form as a result of sage Vashishta's curse on the 8 Vasus. In Hinduism, the Vasus are attendant deities of Indra and later Vishnu. They are 8 elemental gods representing aspects of nature. The name Vasu means dweller or dwelling. They are among the 33 gods. Here are the names of the 8 Vasus and their respective meanings. You can at a later point also look up Vasus and find their meaning. The 8 Vasus are Anala, meaning living or the fire, Dhara, meaning support or the earth, Anila, meaning the wind, Aha, meaning space, Pratyusha, meaning the light or the sun, Prabhasa, meaning the sky, Soma, meaning the moon, Dhruva, meaning the stars. So Vashishta cursed these 8 Vasus. Ganga continues. These 8 Vasus were one day travelling on a holiday with their wives when they came across sage Vashishta's ashram. Outside the ashram, they saw Nandini, Vashishta's divine cow. One of the wives was taken in so much by the beauty of the cow that she requested her husband, Prabhasa, to bring the cow to her. Prabhasa replied, "Dear, we are devas. What use do we have for cow's milk or for cow? Even though it is Nandini whose milk gives everlasting life, we are already enjoying immortality on the account of being devas. Most importantly, sage Vashishta is very fond of Nandini, and it would be improper on our part to violate his integrity." Despite many attempts made by Prabhasa, his wife did not yield. She made imploring requests and melted Prabhasa's heart. He agreed, and thus the 8 Vasus took Nandini by force, Nandini and her calf, and disappeared before Vashishta returned to the ashram. When Vashishta came back and found Nandini missing, he, through his divine vision, saw all that had happened and cursed the 8 Vasus to be born as mortal men in this world. Remember, for a Deva who enjoys all pleasures and immortal life in the heavens, to be born in this world and live the life of a man with the pain and suffering we go through in a lifetime is a horrible experience. When the 8 Vasus came to know of this curse, they ran to Vashishta and fell at his feet, asking for his forgiveness. Vashishta said that the curse cannot be lifted and has to follow its course. But the effect of the curse can be reduced. He said, "Go request Goddess Ganga to be your mother on earth and ask her to relieve you of your birth as soon as you are born, so that you may return to the heavens without long years of suffering." He told this to the 8 Vasus. This reduction in effect I grant to 7 of you who supported Prabhasa in his act of stealing. Since Prabhasa was the one who actually stole my cow, this curse will remain in full effect for him, and he will have to live his lifetime on earth like any other man. But he will have a great life. He will be regarded as one of the best souls to have ever walked this earth. Saying this, Vashishta went back into meditation. Relieved to hear this, the Vasus approached Ganga and requested her to be their mother on earth and throw them into the river as soon as they are born. Ganga agreed, came to earth, became Shantanu's wife to carry out this task. Now, having heard the reasons behind Ganga's act, doesn't it all make sense? Doesn't everything seem to fit? Was it not proper for the Devas to go back to their place of abode as soon as possible? And in order for that to happen, should they not die in this world? Even though they were only a newborn, it is only after death that they can go back. And since they have to go back as soon as possible, they had to die immediately after being born. Could Shantanu have predicted this reason? You may ask why Ganga did not tell Shantanu all this ahead of time. Maybe she felt that Shantanu might try to convince her against her purpose. Or he may be filled with grief at the certainty of loss of his first 7 children. Imagine knowing ahead of time that your wife is going to throw your first 7 sons into a river. Would you ever in your right mind agree? Maybe this was the reason Ganga did not tell Shantanu. Whatever the case may be, no amount of analysis will satisfy us. But it is important to understand that this was destiny's way, and the way had a purpose. The purpose exists whether or not we are aware of it. This is our lesson in karma, and this is our lesson in accepting the karma. Now, what happened to the eighth child, the child that Ganga did not throw into the river? After telling the story, Ganga left Shantanu but took the eighth child with her. She brought him up for a few years, and once the infant became a child, Ganga brought him back to Shantanu and said, "O king, this is the eighth son I bore you. His name is Devavrata. He has learned the Vedas from Vashishta and is well skilled in all forms of science and archery." Shantanu was overjoyed at getting his son back. This child, his son, was glowing like a person of divine origin. He raised his son from there on, full of love. This son, Devavrata, goes on to become the famous Bhishma in the next chapter.